Ever notice how top players, even against the best opponents, don't seem to rush their shots? Well, here's the secret. The best players are incredibly good at analyzing threat levels in just a millisecond. Picture this. You're at home and you place your hand on a stovetop. Immediately, your body recognizes the threat and you pull your hand away to prevent a burn. You don't even have to think about it. Now you put your hand under a faucet. The water is still hot, but your brain recognizes it's not an immediate threat, and you're able to leave your hand there for a few seconds before pulling away. This is the first of 7 mistakes that low elo players are constantly making that prevents them climbing in ranked. This process is the exact same thing that happens when a pro player sees an enemy on their screen. In just an instant, their brain begins to analyze threat levels. If the target is aiming directly at them, immediately you'll see them flick to land the shot. It only takes them a millisecond to know that if they don't shoot right now, they're going to lose the gunfight. Oftentimes, however, their opponent won't be prepared for a gunfight. This is when you'll see them be patient with their shots. Many people praise aim training methods such as the Miyagi method for teaching players to be patient with their aim. But the reality is, these aim methods miss out on some very important nuance that needs to be applied in all of your matches. Sometimes your target is aiming at you and you need to rush your shots. However, if they're not an immediate threat, maybe they're fighting your teammate or have utility out, you can afford to take an extra second to line up that shot to make sure you land the kill. Imagine you've just taken down an enemy. The adrenaline is just pumping. Your instinct might be to swing wide for more action, but here's the catch. Because of your last kill, everyone is looking at you. The enemy team is now likely focused on your position. In high-level play, what you'll often see instead is a tactic known as ping-ponging. After a player scores a kill, instead of swinging for more, they wait, allowing a teammate to take the next engagement. You might hear teammates call out, "I've got next," signaling they're ready to take next contact. Now, why does this work? After a kill, the enemy is alert to your position. By switching who takes the next contact, you disrupt their expectations and force them to adjust their aim and strategy. They don't want to just ignore you, because you could peek again at any moment. In fact, as we mentioned before, they're expecting you to wide swing. So when you don't, they're just caught sitting in a really uncomfortable place, not wanting to take their attention off of you, but still having to worry about other threats. This moment of adjustment can be the split second your teammate needs to secure another kill. This strategic restraint and teamwork can be the difference between a single kill and winning the entire round. Now, keep in mind, if you're looking to climb, by far the most important thing for you to master is the fundamentals. This goes far beyond things like crosshair placement and counter strafing too. It also includes things you probably don't even realize that you're doing wrong, like peeking, spacing with teammates, or even just where you choose to stand. The players who are consistently able to drop 30 in their matches, they're all masters of these things. And you could be too now with our Aim God Masterclass that's expertly designed to teach you all of the fundamentals that you need to know in just one course. Our goal is to have this course teach you everything you need to know, which is exactly why we are constantly updating it as users submit feedback. The game, it's always developing, and that's why our website is too. With new courses posted every single month, you can be sure you're always ahead of the curve when it comes to your mechanics. And on top of that, we also offer a rank improvement guarantee, so if you don't climb while using our service, you don't pay. Now we know it sounds insane, but our #1 priority is to be a standing name in the community for years to come, and the only way to do that is to create the best product that we can. Check it out using the link below. Baiting your teammates might sound like a taboo, but in reality, it's an essential strategy, especially in lower elo ranks. Many players shy away from this tactic, fearing criticism from it. But let's set the record straight here. Effective baiting can honestly just be a game changer. Firstly, in low elo, you can't always rely on teammates to trade effectively or close out rounds. In such scenarios, baiting is not just a choice, it's a necessity. The goal of baiting isn't to selfishly let teammates die for no reason. It's about using the attention they command to secure kills or, ideally, the round. When executed well, baiting should be a seamless, strategic move. Picture this. Your teammate enters A site on Haven, drawing enemy fire. You're not idly watching. You're positioned to immediately trade any enemy engagement. But there's another side to baiting, often overlooked too. Sometimes teammates make suboptimal plays, unnecessary noise, or risky moves. In these instances, baiting transforms a potentially losing play into an advantage. By following closely and being ready to capitalize on the enemy's reaction to your teammate, you turn their mistake into an opportunity. This proactive approach is crucial for climbing ranks, particularly in low elo where players frequently fall for baits. Remember, baiting is not about betraying your team, it's about strategically positioning yourself to make the best out of every situation, whether it's an ideal setup or just taking advantage of your teammate's elephant feed. It's about turning every scenario, good or bad, into a potential win for your team. Remember, people are only yelling at you for baiting if you watch them run in and do absolutely nothing. If you follow them up and clutch out the round, most people don't even call that baiting, they call that trading, which is literally just a more acceptable form of baiting. This brings us to our next mistake though. Stacking up as a 5-man squad every round is a common trap many players fall into. This approach not only makes you predictable, but also underutilizes one of the most effective strategies in Valorant: lurking. In lower elo games, lurking can be incredibly rewarding, and here's a simple tip for you. At the start of each offensive round, take a moment to see where your team is heading, then, unironically, consider moving to the opposite side of the map. This simple decision could significantly increase your win rate. Now, why does this work? In low elo, players often overlook their flanks or are slow to rotate, making lurk kills surprisingly easy to obtain. By positioning yourself away from your team, you create pressure on multiple fronts, forcing the enemy to split their attention and their resources. Moreover, let's consider the utility aspect. Valorant's diverse agent pool, with around 24 agents, offers a multitude of ways to stall or counter a 5-man push. Approximately 18 of these agents have abilities like mollies, slows, or stuns that can effectively bottleneck a grouped team in a choke point. When your team blindly commits to a 5-man push, you're essentially walking into a trap laid out by these abilities. Lurking not only gives you the chance for easy picks, but also gives your team options in case they immediately get smoked off and stuffed trying to rush at the start of the round. Now they can freely rotate around the map since you're already on the other side holding map control. The goal isn't necessarily to always work alone though, it's just to make sure your team isn't all 5-manning. On a map like Split, for example, sending 3 players mid and 2 towards A can drastically improve your chances. This split play dilutes the enemy's utility effectiveness as they can no longer focus all their resources on a single point. It forces them to make tough decisions on where to commit their abilities and players. In summary, avoid the temptation of moving as a single unit every round. Embrace lurking and split plays to create openings and catch your opponents off guard. This not only makes your team less predictable, but also leverages the strengths of your agents and capitalizes on the common weaknesses in lower elo gameplay. By doing so, you'll find your offensive rounds becoming more effective and your overall match performance improving significantly. Funny enough, spreading your team too thin on defense is a common misstep in lower elo games that you'll see on the opposite side of the map. A classic example is on Icebox, where playing every angle solo is a recipe for disaster. Defense in Valorant isn't about solo heroics. It's about smart positioning, teamwork, and crafting traps with your teammates. One effective strategy is using the buddy system. Instead of trying to cover each choke point individually, pair up, or form small groups. This approach allows you to set up powerful crossfires and play off each other's positions, significantly increasing your defensive effectiveness. For instance, use your Sentinel's utility to cover one area while 2 or 3 players focus on making a play in another. This way, you can concentrate your defense without sacrificing map control. Remember, even though there are numerous abilities in Valorant to stall or disrupt an enemy push, numbers still matter. In a situation where you're outnumbered, such as a 1v5, no amount of utility can fully compensate for the lack of backup. Therefore, it's crucial to avoid isolated positions where you can easily be overrun. You'll commonly hear positions like this referred to as one and dones, meaning you get one kill and then you get traded out. Focus on teamwork and intelligent positioning instead of making solo plays all the time. Utilize the buddy system, craft plays and traps together, and set up crossfires. Your strength lies in coordination and mutual support. By adopting these strategies, you're going to find your defensive rounds becoming more robust, improving your overall performance in all matches. Another bad habit that players fall into, particularly in low elo, is crouch spraying. Crouch spraying is a habit that feels instinctively safe to many players, especially in low elo. The idea is that by crouching and spraying during a duel, you're making yourself a smaller, harder to hit target. However, this tactic often backfires, particularly against skilled opponents. The primary issue with crouch spraying is that it makes you a predictable and stationary target. Experienced players typically aim for the head, and when you crouch, you're making your head a completely stationary target. This is especially true in longer range engagements where mobility and unpredictability are key. While crouch spraying can have its moments though, often in close quarters combat with weapons like the Phantom, it's generally a bad habit to form, especially in lower ranks. It's a crutch that limits your movement and makes you an easy target in most situations. The key is to understand that crouch spraying isn't a necessity. It's an option to be used sparingly and strategically. A more effective and versatile technique though is strafe shooting. This involves moving, or strafing, side to side while firing in short, controlled bursts. This method keeps you mobile, making it harder for enemies to hit you and still allows for accurate shooting. Learning to counter strafe, stopping momentarily to shoot accurately before moving again, is a fundamental skill that greatly enhances your dueling capability. In lower elo, where players might not have mastered their aim, strafe shooting can be particularly effective. It allows you to dodge incoming fire while maintaining your own accuracy. As a default strategy, just focus on mastering strafe shooting. It provides a solid foundation for your aim and movement mechanics, and it's adaptable to a wide range of situations. This will not only make you a harder target, but also improve your overall gameplay, positioning you better for climbing ranks and facing more skilled opponents. Finally, our last mistake is when players throw away number advantages for no good reason. Over-aggression when in the lead is a common pitfall in lower elo games. It's a scenario that often unfolds a little bit like this. Your team is up 5-3 on bind, you're feeling confident, and decide to push out a B site, only to be taken down. Suddenly, what was a comfortable 5v3 advantage shifts to a more precarious 4v3 situation. This kind of unnecessary aggression can give the enemy team an opening they shouldn't have had. The key in such situations is to leverage your numbers advantage just by playing it cool. Instead of seeking out additional kills, focus on holding angles, playing the clock, and forcing the enemy to come to you. When you're in the lead, the onus is on the enemy team to make a move, and by playing defensively, you reduce their chances of turning the round in their favor. Another important aspect to consider is the psychological impact of momentum shifts during a match. When an enemy team manages to level the playing field from a seemingly hopeless situation, like turning a 5v2 into a 2v2, it significantly boosts their confidence and their morale. This momentum swing can be more impactful than the actual numbers game. In low elo, where games can often be a roller coaster of emotions and momentum swings, it's crucial to remember this. A 2v4 might feel hopeless, where a 2v3 suddenly seems much more achievable for the enemy. Ego challenges or taking fights purely for the sake of out-aiming your opponent can often backfire in these scenarios.
You guys ever lose a round to some dude who's just sitting in hell on Ascent? He's literally just hanging out, and your duelist runs it up heaven instead of clearing hell. It happens on B site too. They're just sitting in Boathouse, and your duelist full sprints into spawn. They don't even go on site. You're even lucky if they press the button to shut the door. They just sprint into spawn. This is all part of a bigger issue, to be honest, though. It's not just duelist players that skip steps. Initiators do it too. You ever try to rush B and your whole team just dies in B main because your breach didn't stun, your Sova didn't drone, or your Omen didn't blind? It's like your team just assumed B main would be free. You need to take these things step by step. You can't take the site until you've taken B main, and you can't plant the spike until you've taken the site. A lot of times, players just won't clear things. Your duelist will just double satchel into elbow on bind without helping you clear sight. You need to recognize that your team needs you. You have to take things step by step. You cannot skip steps on these entries just for the sake of going fast. This applies to every single player on their team with pathing and utility, although honestly, duelists and initiators are the main culprit. You gotta do your job and keep your team safe. This is just one of the first of 7 low elo mistakes you're making every single game that is holding you back. In this video, we're going to be going over 6 more crucial mistakes that you can fix today to help you instantly start ranking up. Moving on to mistake number 2, players oftentimes try to do way too much. They're constantly trying to switch things up. You'll notice this especially if you ever get into a flow with winning rounds and start calling strats. For example, let's say you're playing on Haven and you call for a C push. You get a really awesome C push and then you think, oh, that worked really well. Now let's do a C split through garage. So you do a C split and go through garage, getting 2 wins like that. And then you decide, okay, now let's do a B play. So you go B and maybe that works. And you think, okay, let's go A. So you try to go A and it's not as good, but you take the site and play it. And then you decide, let's go do a B fake and we'll go into C. What players are missing is that it's not always because you're calling these crazy strats and catching them off guard that all this stuff is working. It's probably working because there's a hole in their play, whether you see it or not. The skill in calling strats is being able to pick out that hole that they have and take advantage of it. You don't want to be doing all sorts of random stuff just because these are strats that you can think of. You want to do things that make sense based on how your opponents are playing. For example, it doesn't necessarily matter if you won 3 straight rounds on C. The best play in this scenario could just be to slam C again. Maybe their C defense just really sucks. You hit C 3 times in a row, it worked all 3, maybe you could still do it a 4th or 5th time. There's no reason to switch it up just because you feel like you need to do something new. Plainly put, you don't need to fix what's working. Players are often focused too much on being surprising and catching opponents off guard, rather than focusing on what is good and what works. What is our team comp good at that the enemy team will have trouble stopping? That's normally what's going to be the best for you. Eventually, if you do that enough and they end up stopping you, then you can adapt and set up a backup plan. Maybe even set up a lurker in the 4th round so that if you see something that you don't like, then you could pivot into something different. But don't get mixed up and think that the secret to ranked is calling these crazy strats to win games. Just keep it simple. That's actually a lot of what we focus on here at SkillCapped. We simplify the game so that players like you can climb stupid effectively in any elo of the game. Valorant is hard, but it doesn't have to feel so hard. With our world-class courses, we make it easy for anyone like you to start climbing, no matter your rank. With our Aim God course, Movement course, and our Road to Diamond climb, you'll have everything that you need to rank up or your money back. We actually guarantee that you will climb 500 rating while using our service, or you don't pay. If you want to see where 500 RR would land you, definitely check out our free rank calculator over at SkillCapped using the link in the description. But other than that, let's get into mistake number 3. So this is mistake number 3, and man, low elo players do this a lot. You're forgetting to say good enough when it comes to your decisions. A lot of times, people just have lineups or setups or positions that they're really attached to. They feel like they always need to fire their Sova Dart from a specific lineup, or they always need to place their Viper Wall from a specific place, or they always need to place their Omen Smoke in that one spot. They always need to do that one specific setup on Killjoy. But sometimes just getting a little bit of value out of your abilities is totally fine, especially if you're already winning. I actually got a coaching session from a tier 1 pro about a year ago, and I asked him about this when I was playing Gecko. I said, sometimes I feel like I'm throwing my utility on Gecko, and I don't know when it's worth it for me to pick it up, and when I should leave it on the ground and regroup with my team instead. It's really easy to get pulled towards picking up your utility on Gecko. It's almost like it calls to you when it's on the ground. Frequently is not the correct decision to actually pick it up. Sometimes it feels like you're going to want that extra flash, and sometimes you're not. And that's kind of the answer to the question. Are you going to need this flash later in the round? Is it worth it to greed and pick this up and miss out on the potential timing that you need to get on site and trade your teammate? Or maybe to not be in position for a specific thing happening. For example, you use your flash on a default and your whole team is rushing into site. Do I pick up that flash or do I go with my team? Sometimes that one flash is good enough if you're ahead of the game. If your team's already ahead in numbers and you guys have a good post-play position, you're doing fine. You don't really need that flash. There's no reason to pick it up and the round's already pretty much secured. All you have to do is set up trades with your teammates and you should win. Now remember, at the end of the day, the only goal in the round is to win the round. It doesn't matter how you get there. What matters is that you do it. So if you can use one piece of utility, even in a lackluster way, and it'll get the job done and be faster, oftentimes it's going to be a lot better than having to back up and find that perfect piece of utility that might end up costing you too much time and losing you the round. Remember that time is a very valuable resource, so you don't want to use too much of it doing something that's perfect, when sometimes it's just best to do something that's good. Now let's talk about mistake number 4, not thinking about the scenario. You ever see a pro player and they'll do like TikTok clips, or it'll be on like a pro stream where they'll do something crazy, like jump out a window on Haven or something and get like 3 aces, just something ridiculous and completely impossible, right? But then you try to do it and you do the same exact thing that they did, the same flash, same jump out window or something, and you just get 1 tap. Like out of the air. You don't even hit the ground. It is pretty crazy the difference in execution a lot of the times, and why pros are doing things that people will just miss out on. Let's start with something simple, Sova darts. I think Sova darts are just a very simple piece of utility that are oftentimes misused greatly. So if you're going to dart on B site ascent at the start of the round when your team is executing, oftentimes people will just throw it on the tree, which is fine. This is not a bad dart. Or they'll throw it on the draft. The problem oftentimes when people shoot these darts is that they're not timing it with their team's execute. They're using it way before, pretty much as soon as they can. They'll just rip the dart, and sometimes it'll get a tag and tell you that somebody stares, which is good info, I guess. But ideally, what you want is for that dart to be landing as your team can capitalize on it, as they're going in. If you're just firing off that dart whenever, people are just going to shoot it. The dart will fade, and then that person can take a duel unhindered or even reposition. They're not going to be tagged by that dart anymore, and they'll get the chance to actually fight. And oftentimes, they're going to win it. So it's not necessarily about what dart you're throwing, it's about when you're doing it. It is the timing of the dart that matters. That's the problem with lineups and setups that you copy from creators online, is that oftentimes players inconvenience themselves to use these things. You need a lineup that suits your situation, and if you need to break your timing to do that, it's oftentimes just not good enough. We've roasted lineups a bit in this video, and it's important to mention lineups can be incredible, but you need to find lineups that suit your playstyle. Lineups that fit where you're actually playing. You can't just run a mile away to shoot a recon dart because it looks cool or lands in a cool spot. You need that dart to land in sync with your team and allow you or someone on your team to capitalize on it. The same thing applies to things like post-plant mollies. Anyone can find a lineup that lands on top of the spike. All it takes is a couple minutes in a custom game. What you really need is a lineup that lands on the spike, fits the positions that you like to play in post-plant. A lineup that is not super inconvenient for you, that can keep you in the round, but is also safe enough for you to take advantage of. If you don't have this lineup, I'd almost argue it's not worth it to use a lineup at all. A well-timed molly or Sova dart is always going to be better than a poorly timed lineup, hands down. This is part of the reason that I get tilted when people say that you need lineups to play Sova. Maybe at a pro level, it's great to have all these random darts, but at the ranked level, all you need is good timing. All right, now let's talk about mistake number 5, and this one might surprise you. It's about not egoing enough. Now, if you had like a bell curve, it's like when you take low elo players, we're talking like really low elo. The ego thing is just far too much, right? They think they can win every gunfight and they don't really think about what they do, so they just swing stuff because they're bad. They don't really know what they're doing and they'll end up dying sometimes, but honestly, in low elo, it really doesn't matter because if their mechanics are half decent, they'll probably win. Then you take like the mid-tier players, right? And like this is where most people are. Gold, platinum, diamond area. These players know what it's like to get sat down from time to time. And especially when they're climbing, they're probably bottom fragging sometimes. Because of this, in a way, these players get afraid to take fights. Like, you don't really want to ego swing things because it's like, you never really know who you're swinging. It's good to play smart. And if the spike's ticking down, I wouldn't want to swing. I'd probably just want to take my time, right? Maybe just bait and try to play time. But then you get back to like the category of higher elo players again. And it's like, they'll just start ego checking people a lot. And it's because they know that if people can't stop them, they can get away with a lot of extra stuff. This can make it really easy to get an advantage in the game, and getting advantages is kind of the name of the game. It makes it a lot easier to carry if you can push your luck a little bit every now and then, which is kind of the problem when you go against these players who ego everything. Sometimes you have to shut them down. You just have to ego check them and just swing confidently. Stuff like this is going to catch them off guard. This is when you can also put people on tilt a lot of the times, is when you keep swinging them and fighting them and winning. Because they're expecting you to play in the most strategic way all the time. They're expecting you to do what makes sense. But if you're confident and you have a 50-50 or a favorable duel anyway, sometimes it's just better to take that fight, end it there, and then boost your confidence a little bit. What you need to recognize in high elo is that every single player thinks they are the best player in the lobby. If you can't match that confidence, it's going to be very tough for you to play in those lobbies. Going back to our spike example where the spike's down and the time's ticking away, you could continue to jump peek, maybe throw in a few jiggles. After all, the smart decision would probably be to play time, right? What you find oftentimes though is that people who try to go for those jiggles, it's either one of two scenarios. Either they're really confident and they know exactly what they're doing, or they're not confident at all and they end up dying while doing it anyway and losing the round. So at the end of the day, all it comes down to is just confidence. If you always make the safe decision, it's going to take a toll on your confidence. Sometimes you're going to have to take that fight, and when you do, I want you to think, I'm about to sit this guy down. All right, let's move on to mistake number 6, which is not thinking about your team's setups. We watched a recent Silver VOD on the channel that you guys can actually go see, and they're doing just really silly stuff. They'll be double stacking Sight with Killjoy and Sage. We have a double sentinel set up over there, and then we end up in a retake when they go to the other site. And then we don't have any retake potential because we put both of our sentinels on one site. It just kind of sucks for us. All of that just comes down to, though, is just lack of awareness of your team's setup and how it relates to the map. There are certain areas of the map that favor different things. For example, let's take a look at a map like Pearl, which is coming back into the rotation. On Pearl, B site is kind of hard to hold. You just have this really long lane that there's not a lot of sight lines for defenders to take, and if you try to push up B long, it's just very committal. However, it's a really good site for an operator. If you could set up a jet with an operator or a Youre, they can actually do a lot of work here. If you want to fight B long, you basically have to have like an Astra smoke deep, and then you have to have a lot of utility to hold the attackers back. And then again, you're very committed. It's not like you're getting out of there with any reasonable agent. So it can be tough for this reason. Now, if you want to hold it as Viper, what you can do is you can place your smoke on the edge, but the problem with that is that now you're letting the attackers walk all the way up B long for free. If you're not spotting for info or anything, especially if you're throwing the smoke up, it can be really tough to anchor B site. B site is more for denial and retakes. You end up coming in and retaking, and you have to play the post plan. Contrast this with the A site. The A site actually is a lot easier to hold. There's the entrance that you can stuff utility with. There's a lot of corners that they have to clear. It's kind of tough for them to take back site because there's a bunch of different entrances. It's hard to clear out dugout, not to mention that players can just spam the spike through the wall at any point in time. Taking A site can be kind of tough, and they almost want to split through art. Because of this site works pretty well for stall agents. Vipers, Omens, Killjoys. Viper can set up her wall, or she can set up her smoke orb on B, but playing towards the A site is a lot more effective for her molly. Basically, just placing anything that can clog up the choke point is going to be a lot more effective on A site. You don't necessarily need to push up. It's not as good for an operator, but it's a lot easier to stall. That's normally what you want to do on these sorts of maps. It's kind of important to understand how these maps work and where the agents excel in them if you really want to push your rank. Just know that, hey, I'm playing this agent. This agent's really good on this site for this reason. I should take advantage of that. If you're not thinking about the map and what your team has or what your team needs to actually help you win the rounds, then it's going to be really tough to rank up. All right, let's wrap this up with mistake number 7, not playing around your team's ultimate. The ultimate economy is something that's kind of developed over time in the game. I remember way back in the beta, people didn't really pick up ultimate orbs at all, which is really crazy if you think about how powerful ultimates are and how powerful they were. It might surprise a lot of you to hear that Brimstone, for example, at the start of the game had 6 ultimate charges for his ult. That means that he was on par with Phoenix. He could just pick up a bunch of ultimate orbs and he could use his orbital strike like literally every other round. And if I recall correctly, if it killed somebody, he would even get an ult charge for that. The funny thing with Brimstone too is that his orbital strike can be used for like free kills a lot of the times, especially in low elo. If you see somebody in a corner as Brimstone, you ult them and they're dead. There's not really much that they can do about it. Back then, nobody really thought about ultimates that much. Nowadays, everybody's doing it. As you get into lower ranks, people are thinking about who should plant and defuse the spike. People are maybe grabbing ultimate orbs a little bit more often. Not as often, but you should really be thinking about what ultimates you have online and what strategies that you can run with these ults to win the rounds. One of the big issues with Valorant right now is that if a team wins pistol round, not only are they getting an economy advantage, but oftentimes they're also getting an ultimate orb advantage. They're getting the spike down, they're picking up more ultimate orbs, they're getting a lot more kills, right? And they can use these things to snowball around. We have a breach ult, so we're going to use that to win this round. Now next round we have a Killjoy ult, and we're going to use that to win that round. Now next round we have a Youre ult, and we're going to use that to win that round. And it could snowball the game out of control where they always have these ultimates online that they can keep cycling through. So really keep in mind when these ultimates are available and try to think about what your next play is going to be based around that. If someone is close to their ultimate, maybe you have them seek out the last few kills on an eco and everybody follows them to trade them rather than everybody just running around crazily looking for kills. Now, obviously in ranked, this is going to be pretty hard to control. People are just going to do what they want to do. But this is ideally the best way that you can handle it. And if you're able to call out, hey, I'm close to my ult, can I get this defuse? Or hey, can I get this last kill? And people will listen, then more power to you. In video games, a massive issue that players have is struggling with something referred to as tunnel vision. This essentially just means that even though this is what is on their screen, this is what they actually see. Now, although aim is one of the most important parts of the game, this is heavily what causes players to not rank up. Because as you can see, we're missing out on absolutely crucial information related to our teammates in this image. In Valorant, players are a critical resource in the game. Deaths in a round are largely unavoidable. Eventually, someone is likely going to die. We've all been there in those situations where our teammates all lose their gunfights, and all we can help but think is, man, my team really sucks. Which might be true. Maybe your team does suck. But it might surprise you to hear that dying is a crucial part of the game, and not all deaths are considered bad. For example, if one of your teammates dies and you're paying attention and get 3 kills off of it, that's actually a pretty good death. Your teammate dying was necessary for you to get those 3 kills. It could have been either one of you that died, but all that matters is that someone on your team got set up to make a play. However, the problem comes when your teammate dies for nothing. If your teammate dies and you weren't paying attention, so you got 0 trade kills and 0 space off of it, you're just getting set back. The problem many low elo players run into is that they essentially just watch their teammates run in and die without making any effort to do anything about it. This is just the first of 7 low elo mistakes that you're making every single game that we're going to be going over in today's video. We'll go step by step covering 6 more massive mistakes that you make every single game and how you can fix them. Such as mistake number 2, which is overcommitting. This can be as subtle as choosing to short peek versus choosing to jump peek for info. Even the slightest misstep could result in your death, so you need to be really careful. The best way to avoid this mistake is to think ahead and understand if taking a fight there would even give you an advantage, or if it would be worth it. Remember, if you're peeking into multiple players, you do not have the advantage. So if you hear 3 members of the enemy team barreling down on you, maybe it's not a great idea to dry swing that angle. If the enemy team knows where you are, or if you only have one place you can peek from, it's also likely that you don't have the advantage. If the enemy has better weapons for that range, you don't have the advantage. As you can see, it's important to think about all of the factors that come into play before just randomly swinging angles. Aside from this, try to recognize when a round is likely lost. If your team is down 3 people, don't start ripping your ultimate on a retake just because. Maybe wait for a kill or 2 to take place before you decide to commit that ultimate. It might not even be worth it to go for it in the first place if your team has a low economy. Saving is something that players don't utilize enough in matchmaking, and sometimes you just have to know when it's time to call around. Imagine you're on a scented market and you get tagged down to 30 HP by the enemy in mid. Instead of peeking again and risking your life, fall back to a safer position or ask a teammate to rotate and help you. By not overcommitting to these fights when you're already low HP, you keep yourself alive longer and maintain a stronger presence on the map. Trust me when I say that knowing when to back off can often be the difference between a win and a loss. You know what else can be the difference between a win and a loss? Your freaking movement. And let me tell you that some of your guys' movement really sucks. It's just horrible. It's not about learning to dead zone or counter strafe either. It's just the way that you peek angles is really slow. Like, take a look at this peek. This guy gets one shot immediately. No amount of aiming is going to fix this. So if you want to fix this, we've published over at SkillCapped the Ultimate Movement God course that will showcase exactly how you can fix your movement in under 20 minutes. That's right, one course and you'll be looking like this. Afterwards, you're also welcome to ask questions in our Ask a Pro Discord server, where our coaches will give you direct feedback into whatever you're struggling with, and you can even send in VODs and have coaches take a look at them. All this is also backed by our rank improvement guarantee, so if you don't climb, you don't pay. It's pretty insane value. You get dozens of courses, hundreds of videos, personalized feedback, and even VOD reviews. Like, that's freaking nuts. Check it out using the link in the description below. Let's dive into mistake number 3 though, forgetting to communicate. Listen up, because this one is crucial. Players likely aren't trying to avoid communication, but many just don't realize what they should be saying and when it's the right time to talk. First off, specific times to talk are during the beginning of rounds and during post plans. At the start of the round, coordinating with your teammates and coming up with a plan might be one of the easiest things to do. You have so much free time to talk when nothing else can happen. Do literally anything. Most players will pop a surrender vote before they even try to come up with some sort of strategy with their team. Please, just say literally anything during the pre-round. Now, during gunfights or while holding angles, it's usually best to actually avoid talking. You need to focus during these critical moments, and since gunfights are one of the most important parts of the game, they require a lot of your attention, especially when you're new to the game. While, of course, it's optimal and the best players can talk while they're taking gunfights, for the most part, you really shouldn't be focusing on it. Okay, so we got a time when you should talk and a time when you shouldn't talk. What else? Well, this might surprise you, but when you're dead is actually a super helpful time to be talking. Now, most people are going to be like, well, isn't that backseating? But it's got to be useful information. Don't tell people what to do. Instead, relay important details that they might have missed out on. Sometimes those people alive are just preoccupied with fights, or maybe they're just bad at communicating. If they hear something and don't say it for them. For example, if my teammate hears 3 enemies pushing A but doesn't call it out, I can step in and I can just say there's 3A. It's all about filling in the gaps and making sure that everyone has the intel that they need to succeed. Or here's even a funny thing that I do sometimes when I'm dead. Sometimes I tell people to do things like I am the other person alive with them. Like, hey, can you come double up in hell? The other guy isn't going to say no most of the time. He's just not going to say anything. This way, even though I'm not alive, I can get my 2 teammates who clearly aren't on the same page at least executing the same strategy. Remember, communication isn't just about yelling enemy positions. It's about getting people on the same page. If you're low on health and afraid to peek, you need to let your team know so that they can cover you. Communication is a massive skill that is super tough to learn, but just start by saying what you're doing and what you see, and after you got that down, branch out into suggesting plans. Keep this up for a couple dozen games and you'll go far, kid. Now, for mistake number 4, planting the spike might seem straightforward, but doing it in the wrong spot can cost your team the round very easily. So we're attacking on bind, and we've successfully taken control of the A site. We're the designated spike carrier. So we run out of showers and we plant the spike in the corner of triple. Pretty normal spot, right? Well, maybe, until you get picked off and your teammates from U-Haul lose the round because they can't see the damn spike.
As a general rule, when you plant the spike, you want it to be visible from all the possible locations that your team might be playing from in post plants. Not only that, but you also want the spike to be placed while facing towards a wall so that even if it does get smoked off, it's a lot easier to spam. Good spike placement allows your team to cover the defuse from multiple angles, forcing the enemy team to clear more positions and making it harder for them to get the defuse off. You also don't want to commit to planting the spike before your team has even cleared the site. Especially if you're a support player, you probably run into this issue a lot because you plant the spike a lot. If you don't clear the site, it's very likely you're going to die while planting, or that one of your teammates will die and you won't be there to trade them. You have time in the round, and most rounds are not won on time anyway. Secure the site, make sure it's clear, and then commit to the plant. This way, when you do plant, you won't have to commit to a horrible plant location anyway, because it'll be safe to choose a good one. This will be one of the tips that you don't exactly feel all of the time, but you'll certainly notice how much harder it is to win the round when the spike is planted in a bad spot going forward. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that low elo players make is doing the same thing every single round. You're playing on Haven and you swing Garage every round. You might get a pick or two at first, but soon enough the enemy team catches on. They pre-aim you and they kill you. And then you try it again because it's worked before and the same thing happens. So maybe one round you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to swing Garage this time. I'm just going to hold it. And then they flash you and run you down. Listen, dude, it is obvious that you are playing Garage. You've become predictable, and predictability is a death sentence in Valorant. The problem with doing the same thing every single round is that it makes you really easy to read. Good players can develop maybe 5 or 6 different strategies to abuse your position if they know exactly where you're going to be every single round. To avoid this, you need to mix up your strategies. If you get a kill or 2 peeking Garage, maybe try to walk up C one round, or even set up a trap play in Garage so that when they try to come and punish you, you can actually shut them down. As much of an FPS that Valorant is, it's also a strategy game. By changing up your approach and keeping the enemy guessing, you will become much harder to target and pin down and increase your chances of winning rounds. Now, for mistake number 6, one of the common pitfalls for low elo players is playing too slow. Valorant is a tactical shooter, but that doesn't mean that you should be moving at a snail's pace. When you play too slow, you give the enemy team too much time to adjust to your play. Not only that, but some of you would literally sooner wait out the round rather than entry onto a site. No, really, take a look at this clip from a VOD review I did recently. So you end up rotating over towards A. I actually don't know what you guys are doing. See what I mean? Like, we're like, there's 40 seconds left in the round and we haven't left spawn yet. Like, we took B main, I guess. So that kind of works. But this is what I was saying, where it feels like you guys would sooner run out of time than enter site, you know? So I just want to see a little bit more confidence from you guys. Oh my gosh. We're 17 seconds left. We're still in spawn. We ran out of time. We weren't able to, it happened. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I mean, like, you get my point now, though. So now, I'm not saying that it's better, but in high elo, rounds will literally be over in seconds because players just run it down at the speed of light. A lot of it has to do with a fear and confidence issue here. In low elo, they have no confidence, so they just won't scale up. Whereas in high elo, they have too much confidence, so they just run it down. You've got to find that middle ground. Don't be afraid to push forward all of the time. Sometimes you should be afraid to push forward. Like, if your team has a huge advantage and you don't want to throw that advantage, sometimes it's good to play slow. But like, if your team needs a play to win the round, you have to be willing to play aggressive and make that play. You can't just sit back and wait for your teammates to do it, because that's how you end up hard stuck, and you don't want to be hard stuck. Now, for mistake number 7, lurking can be a very powerful strategy, but lurking on the opposite side of the map can be really dangerous because you risk getting no value. Your teammates might be fearless and book it into sight, getting themselves killed. If you're too far away, your lurk won't contribute to a fight at all, leaving you in a 1v4. Lurking in the middle of the map is often a much better approach. It puts you in the prime position to cut off enemy rotates, catch flanking opponents, and quickly join the team if needed. For example, lurking around mid on ascent gives you the flexibility to rotate quickly to either site, support your team, and gather crucial information about enemy movements. If you decide to lurk on the opposite side of the map, it can work if your team plays slow and you're making the calls. But this requires good communication and a solid understanding of the game's tempo. If your team doesn't communicate well, or if you're not confident in making calls, it's easier to find value in the center of the map. By positioning yourself this way, you can still gather information that is good for your teammate, but you're not completely out of the fight. Remember as well that lurking isn't just about being sneaky. Sometimes it can also just be about pulling the defender's focus away from your team. If you get spotted in mid, take advantage of that and leverage your position to help your team. Keep people occupied without risking your own life if you can. Maybe land a kill and then keep making noise so that the attention is split. They can't exactly commit to a retake while they've got this thorn in their side in mid, so this is another way that you can get a ton of value out of your lurks on offense. Have you guys seen that TenZ clip where he's talking about low elo being way harder than Radiant?
Am I actually like at gold or some shit? Everything just doesn't make sense, and I'm getting shit on every game because of it. I literally, if I play in like plat level, I will never top frag. I will always be like middle to bottom.
People bring this up all the time as an excuse for why they can't rank up. See, even TenZ thinks low elo is impossible. Now, I'd hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but you guys know TenZ is half joking here, right? Or, well, joking might be the wrong word. It's just, context is really important. I know I'm gonna get some pushback on this, like how could I contradict our King 10s, but just bear with me. The lobby the 10s is saying this in has 2 Radiants in it. This was played at the start of an act reset, so he's playing in around Ascendant Elo. Sort of, his MMR hasn't really reset. To you and me, this isn't low Elo, obviously. But when you're 10s, he thinks this is what Plat must feel like. Now, here's a clip of 10s from 2 years ago where he's actually smurfing in Plat while playing with Kaido.
Oh my god, no. Diamonds? What the fuck? I told you!
This is what I've been doing the entire game.
Okay, let's see it, Ty.
Guy.
Oh,
135%.
You're so mean, man.
One more pillar, I think.
In sight. One enemy remaining.
Got him.
Like, yeah, low elo players do a lot of stupid things, of course. They will definitely catch you off guard at first, but the things that they do are considered stupid because the plays they make are bad. The reality is most players in low elo have the same exact bad habits. They walk through smokes, they hide in corners, and they bait their teammates. If 10s were actually to try to climb out of low elo, it wouldn't be hard at all. It's easy because low elo players are predictable. And if you're stuck in low elo, don't take this the wrong way, because watching this video is going to be your first step to getting out. This is the first of 7 low elo mistakes that you're still making every single game, and once we fix them, you are going to skyrocket in rank. Low elo players are either just walking through smokes for no reason or hiding in corners across the map. All you have to do to counter this is remember to hold smokes and clear every angle, and it's free kills. It's not like low elo players have good aim either, so if you just slow it down, it's really actually hard to lose. This actually brings us to mistake number 2 though, which is you're just a massive doomer. You think low elo is insane. You think that you'll never have good aim. You get one tapped once and suddenly you think that you're getting one tapped in every single fight. We're constantly giving players advice like swing off of your teammates or communicate with your teammates, and you're the type of person to say, well, my teammates never listen. Trust me when I say I get it. I get that your teammates don't listen because my teammates don't listen either. Your teammates will never listen. It doesn't matter what rank you get to, it literally does not ever get better. The other day in an Immortal lobby, I asked on round 1 for my Neon to combo her stun with my Raise nade, and I got told, too much talk, not enough play. This guy's throwing caveman speak at me in Immortal. That doesn't mean that you need to stop trying to do these things though. It's the negative experiences that we remember, but more often than not, it will work out fine. You've got to get out of your head. Half of this game is just about confidence, and if you don't have the confidence to be a good teammate, you're going to lose. You don't need your teammate to listen for you to swing when they take contact. Just look at what they're doing and try to mirror their movements. And if you're popping a surrender vote when you're down 2-3, maybe you do deserve to lose. At the end of the day, try to remember that you're playing a video game. It's supposed to be fun. If someone is calling a strat, try to play along with it. Don't shoot it down just because you feel like it won't work and then not offer up an idea of your own. There are so many people in this game that are just complete doomers. They think that the game is literally impossible to get good at. I'm not kidding when I say I've met people who genuinely believe that every high elo player is cheating. They literally think that pro Valorant is just a hierarchy of cheaters. Like, I can't even imagine why you would bother playing a game at that point, if you genuinely believe the only way to get good is to cheat. I'm not a pro myself, but trust me when I say every god tier player that you look up to was once just like you. They picked up the game, tried to learn it, and probably sucked at first. I heard pro player Automatic mention in an interview recently that he used to queue up all day and bottom frag in lobbies the entire day, but he didn't care because he just wanted to get better at the game.
When I was like 9 and I got a headshot, that felt so amazing to me. And I wasn't getting many. Like, I was horrible when I was 9. I was always like bottom of the scoreboard, like 2 and 40. And it's like, but those 2 kills felt really good. And that's kind of how I feel right now in Valorant.
If I'm being honest, I relate to that because I am the same way a lot of the times. I queue up, bottom frag, and then I go next because it's all about the process. Don't be a doomer, just strive to get better with every game. And if you're bottom fragging in these matches, keep in mind it's probably because you're playing in a higher elo lobby than you're used to. But you're there for a reason. The game thinks that you could rank up. Mistake number 3 though is simple. Your aim just sucks. Now, I know this one really isn't your fault, like you're trying your best. Or are you? Now, I know that some of you watching this video haven't touched deathmatch yet at all this act. Why is that? every aim related video out there tells you that you should play deathmatch or use aim trainers. If you're not doing either, what are you doing? Listen, you can queue matches over and over and over again, but the reality is most of the time in a normal match, you're just holding angles or retaking. You ever have those games where you're in a 1v5 retake every game? Like, did you really get any practice on your aim there? Be honest. Deathmatches might feel like a waste of time for some of you though. Like, what am I really learning getting one-tapped by a bunch of immortal players constantly? The truth is, they're incredibly helpful though. Maybe even one of the best ways to improve at the game if you know what you should be practicing. That's why we cover literally everything that you need to know about getting godlike aim in our new hour-long masterclass over at SkillCapped. It's designed to teach you everything that you need to know about getting godlike aim in Valorant, including breakdowns of crosshair placement, movement mechanics, recoil control, and even covering your positioning. Godlike aim is definitely achievable and will not only teach you how to get it, but will teach you how to be consistent with it. You'll learn exactly what it is that makes a consistent aimer so that you can climb the ranks non-stop. Listen guys, the honest truth is, while there is a lot of strategy in Valorant, it's still an FPS game. This game isn't built for brainiacs like you and me. It's built for aimers. So if you're gonna play it, you might as well learn to aim. Check it out using the link in the description for a discount, and other than that, let's get into our fourth mistake. Have you ever caught yourself frustrated because it feels like you're the only one on the map with a plan? You're peeking corners and checking angles, but your team, they might as well be playing a different game. This is classic low elo Valorant. Everyone is in their own world. The biggest issue with this, baiting teammates, probably without even realizing it. Think about it. You're on defense, chilling at C on Lotus, and your buddy decides to peek Mound. They get picked off, and there's no one to trade. That's a round that just got way more difficult, all because you weren't there to back them up. Maybe you thought that you were just going to anchor site, but your teammate wanted to take a duel and you saw him do it. Every time a teammate falls without a trade, it's a step back for your team. Fixing this just starts with awareness. It's like when you're walking into a crowded place, you're not just looking out for yourself, but also making sure that you don't lose your friends. When you're in game, keep an eye out on your buddies. If they're about to peek an angle, be ready to support them. Valorant is a team game. It's not just about solo plays or highlight reels. It's about moving as a unit, supporting each other, and capitalizing on every advantage. Keep this in mind and you'll not only become a better teammate, but you will also climb ranks much faster. Now for mistake number 5, I actually remembered that this was a thing pretty recently when I was playing with some friends. A lot of low elo players are still ADSing like all of the time. It's a habit that's hard to shake, but here's why you've got to try. It slows you down, messes with your spray, and squishes your field of view. It's just not ideal in most situations. Now, there are a handful of players that will still ADS at really long ranges, but for the most part, it's not super necessary to learn until you're much more experienced with the game. Take a look at the pros if you don't believe me. Their fights are almost all just hip fire. Your aim might not be on their level yet, but try to make sure that the way that you take duels looks convincing. Even if you end up whiffing anyway, you should still try to look like a high elo player when you move and shoot. It's tough at first, sure, but you'll get used to it eventually. Once you get used to moving and shooting, suddenly you're not just playing the game, you're outplaying. And that's the goal, right? To get better and win more and maybe, just maybe, climb out of low elo hell. Now, I'm going to be honest, for mistake number 6, it's actually a personal gripe of mine that I have recently. I've noticed a trend that I think is tripping you up more than you realize, which is jumping to conclusions in your games. Everyone seems to be so confident when they're saying random stuff. You think the enemy is smurfing, that they're fast on the rotate, or that they're camping a site just waiting for you. These guesses are literally just a shot in the dark half the time, and most of the time they're also wrong. Here's the deal. If you have a read, that is part of the game, but try to base the read off of something logical. If you lost a round because you felt like they were stacking a site, try to think to yourself, is there a reason there were 5 people there? They might not be stacking sites, maybe your push was just extremely slow. It only takes 12 seconds to rotate from one site to another normally. Were they all 5 on site, or did they just flood when they got there? When you think like this, it actually opens the door up a lot. They're not stacking sites, but it does seem like they rotated really fast. This could be because you made noise too early, or because they pushed through on the other side of the map and they didn't see you. Maybe if you have a lurker somewhere or try to sell a fake, it could work really well. Other assumptions that players might make would be things like he has an operator, so he's definitely going to be playing A. Like sure, maybe A is a good place to op, but every map has numerous angles where the operator can be strong. He could be A, he could also be B or mid. It's good to have a read that the enemy is going to have an operator, but use that read to make smart decisions. Jump peek angles and use your utility to force that operator back. Don't just assume that he's A so that you can go all gung-ho on B. My least favorite assumption doesn't even have to do with the actual game itself, but it's assuming that a player is smurfing or cheating. Like, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but it doesn't really change anything. I can't tell you how many times I've had teammates in a Mortal Elo literally complain about an enemy smurfing. Like, honestly, who cares? And half the time the guy that they say is smurfing is just dry swinging angles and taking ego fights the whole game. Like, those are objectively bad plays. Just go double swing the guy and sit him down. These players encounter someone with decent aim and psych themselves out so much that they can't even fight them anymore. Do you think pro teams are cowering when they have to play against 10s because he has good aim? No, of course not. They're going to just swing him together and trade him out. The truth is, you're going to encounter players who have better aim than you very frequently. When you do, try not to fight them alone. Just group up with a teammate and trade them out, or use utility to force them off with angles. If you just give up after assuming a player is smurfing, you're going to lose, and half the time you're probably wrong and they were just having a good game. Finally, the last mistake that I see is I see a lot of low elo players switching agents literally every game. They say they have a main, but really that main only shows up at about 30% of their games. Here's the thing. Playing a bunch of different agents doesn't really help. You end up kind of okay at everything, but not really good at anything. Ranked is about hitting your peak, and you can't do that if you're spread too thin. Imagine, your duelist play is top notch, but your support play, not so much. Valorant is all about getting really familiar with just a few agents and not just shopping around. My advice would be pick one agent per map and stick to one role. Like if you're a beast with Viper on Breeze, maybe go Omen on another map. It keeps you focused, but still flexible depending on the map. This is a strategy about honing your skills where it counts and not just boxing you in. So next time you're hovering a new agent in the select screen for whatever reason, think twice. If every time you play on Breeze, you're picking a different agent, yeah, it makes sense that you would suck on Breeze. Keeping it consistent could be your ticket to ranking up.
If you give your teammates too much time to just wander around the battlefield, they will get themselves killed. And this is just one of many mistakes that low elo players make every single game, and it destroys their chances of climbing. It's essential in low elo that you're looking to capitalize on your time during the early portions of the round, so you can have an impact before your entire team just wanders off to their death. If you end up in a 1v5, you will not be able to win. However, a 1v2 or a 1v3, it's manageable, if you're skilled enough. Low elo players are likely to misplay a 1v2, but taking on 5 players alone, it's just too much to ask for. If you're looking to escape low elo, instead, try this. Play close to the spawn barriers at the start of the round. You'll gather super early info from players' footsteps, and often you'll be able to find early picks if you have half-decent mechanics. You can start off the round with a quick lead that'll carry over to more wins and more rank ups. Today we'll be breaking down 6 more low elo mistakes that every one of you are making, and it holds you back every day. Like this one. 50% of low elo players are drastically mismanaging loadouts. If you're not getting a rifle in your hands by round 3, well, you're doing it wrong. Save rounds are a crucial part of Valorant, and if you're constantly forcing Spectres and Stingers, you'll never be able to carry. Rifles are the strongest weapons you can possibly wield in Valorant. The whole game is built around the one-shot headshot, and if you're not saving for a rifle, you're holding yourself back. Instead, next time you can't afford to buy, perform a save. These aren't throwaway rounds. You can absolutely win a save. Instead of just giving up on a save, make it your goal to find a pick and steal that player's gun. Once you can get a gun in your hands, anything can happen. Other valuable things you can do on an eco round are pick up ultimate orbs and try to have it up for your next buy. And try to get a spike plant that'll reward your team with extra money. Don't just throw away eco rounds because you want to play from behind. There's a lot to be gained if you play them right. Sometimes you might find yourself on an eco round with some sort of SMG or shotgun though. In this case, you're likely making a whole different mistake. You need to be taking fights that favor your gun. If you have a Vandal or a Phantom, take fights at whatever ranges you want. Optimally, you want to be fighting around 15 to 20 meters still, but if you have a Spectre or a shotgun, you should be looking for fights that are within 15 meters. The further away your target is with a shotgun or a Spectre, the less likely you'll be able to land the kill, especially if you're taking a headshot angle with a Spectre. You have to keep in mind, you'll never be able to one-hit someone in the head. What this means is if they have a rifle, your opponents will absolutely have the advantage in the gunfight, since they're guaranteed a one-hit headshot and you're not. Because of this, you want to play rad angles and make the enemies get as close to you as possible before you have to take a fight with them. It's also incredibly important you pump up your mechanics if you want to escape low elo. Similar to the last mistake, many players get way too comfortable using guns like the Spectre and Odin. Although these guns are a bit easier to use on the surface, they're going to drastically hold you back if you only use those. We call these crutch weapons. Nope, we didn't misspeak. Crutch weapons, not clutch weapons. A crutch weapon is one that'll hold you back. The reason the Spectre and the Odins will hold you back is because they don't have that one-hit headshot, or the versatility that rifles provide. A rifle, as we mentioned, can really fight anywhere. Sure, its optimal range is 15 to 20 meters, but you can duel from 0 to 50 as well, and you'll always have a chance. You can also get multi-kills really easily with them without using many bullets at all, and you can't do that with a Spectre. Don't believe us? Try to kill an enemy with a Spectre that's 30 meters away. It's a nightmare. Now, try to kill two. Well, it's just not happening. Sure, the Odin might be better at range, but in the Odin's case, it's held back by its mobility and lack of a one-hit headshot. With the Odin, you need to be crouching to truly be accurate with it, and that means if someone swings you, you're a sitting duck. It might be slightly easier to aim, but a good rifler will always one-tap you if you're just crouching in the open spraying, whereas you can only ever kill someone in 2 hits. This is what holds these weapons back, and it makes them worse than rifles. We said it before, and we'll say it again. Valorant is built around the one-hit headshot, and if you're not getting a rifle in your hands, you're doing it wrong. You really don't want to overcomplicate things in low elo. Just save for your rifle, take early fights, and don't gamble stupid fights with bad weapons, and you'll be skyrocketing in no time. But one thing that'll make everything even easier is by remembering to use utility. Especially flashbangs. In low elo, they're incredibly broken. Players just don't expect them, and their reaction times are too slow to turn away from them. You can easily pick up free kills with flashes, recons, or even mollies in low elo. You hardly have to work for them. All you need to do is remember to use your abilities before peeking corners. It might be difficult to figure out where you're going to need to use utility, but basically the best ways to figure it out is by, again, playing close to spawn barriers. Figure out where those early fights are going to come in when the barriers come down, then use utility to fight there first. The more comfortable you get with those timings, the more you'll start to pick up on other timings in the game. Utility is one of the strongest things in Valorant, and it's absolutely what sets it apart from CSGO. Don't be deceived. You should be using your abilities very frequently. And you can actually check on how often you use abilities by clicking on a game in your match history and checking the Performance tab. On the left-hand side of the screen, it'll tell you how often you used each ability per round. Take advantage of this. See if you need to be using your abilities more or less. Although, let's be honest, you probably need to use your abilities a little bit more. One of the most common mistakes we see from low elo players, though, raging at teammates.
You guys have 4 on B. I don't know what the fuck you guys are doing.
It's actually a bit ridiculous to us, to be honest. You're all in low elo. Why are you yelling at each other? It's not like any of you have mastered the game yet. Most low elo players are just coming home from work or just got off school and are looking to play a few matches to relax. Just play the game. Try to have fun. There's no reason to be getting so worked up over a match. Raging at your teammates will never be helpful. All it's gonna do is make them play worse and distract you from the match at hand. A lot of aim in Valorant, it's also mental, right? If you're constantly being frustrated in a match, it's gonna be difficult to rank up. But if you just start relaxing, having some fun, you could instantly climb in rank. I know, it sounds cheesy, but it's a real thing. Don't believe us? Take a break for a week and then come back. You're probably gonna play so much better. It's not like your aim got any better while you weren't playing, you're just more relaxed, and you were able to refocus. Care about your matches less, and definitely don't take it out on your teammates. Nobody wants to be the bad guy, and it's just not worth it. Speaking of teammates, you probably shouldn't always be 5-stacking when you walk around the map. It's good to spread out. Not all of you, but at least 1 or 2 people to perform a split or a lurk, especially in low ranks, can easily carry matches. Low elo players don't know how to sniff out a lurk, so you're probably just going to pick up free kills on enemies not looking at you. It's the easiest way to rank up in low elo by far. You can find so many openings and get massive flanks practically for free. When you 5-man though, if your push fails or you get slowed off, you're just out of luck. Your team might try to rotate, but the enemies will have collapsed on you from all sides, and it probably won't work out very well for you. And this is a good habit to carry over to higher ranks in the game. If you see all 4 of your teammates going towards one entrance, try to head towards another one and find an opening somewhere else. Your teammates are going to pick up all the attention while you're carrying matches.